All right. Um, all right. And welcome, audience, to the Transatlantic Bowdoin Alumni Association. um, we've got two amazing performers for you for this session. Larry Kaplan, longtime Connecticut singer-songwriter with Maine roots, now based in the UK, and Jerry Bryant, a Maine singer-songwriter now in Massachusetts. Two great singers, performers, and Larry known for his immense trove of amazing songs that he's written. Jerry's written a few songs too, but also a great keeper of traditional music. Um, Roast Beef of Old England is one of his big hit records. Um, and I will be putting links in the chat for where you can find out more about their music, or Kate will be, whoever's job it is, we'll be putting links in the chat about where you can find out more about their music. So please take it away, Larry and Jerry.
Yep. I'll go first. Jerry, I've said it already. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be singing with you now. So we could just break down this virtual business. We could actually do it in person one day. So
wouldn't that be great?
My pleasure. Now I'm going to disappoint everybody with a song that I don't think is suitable for children, not because of any bad language, but because it has to do with a goldfish. And it's just too much for someone 3 or 4 to handle as I sing it. So you'll get the reason for that. It's called "The Next to the Last Fish on Earth." The muse got hold of me one day. That's all I can say about this. So. Well, it's lonely in this fishbowl. Well, I just float around all night, and I swim back and forth for whatever it's worth. I don't know if a fish has rights. I hate that hard hat diver. Haven't said a single word to him, 'cause he don't make bubbles and he just wants trouble, and there's no friggin' room to swim. Oh, no, no, it's time for me to go. Well, the world is a mighty big ocean, gonna let that other fish know. Well, the water's still and silent. I'm all alone in here since Moby, Ralph, and Marianne went belly up last year. I loved a fair young angel fish. She was the joy of my short life, until that big nuke net scooped her out, flushed her out of sight. Oh, no, no, it's time for me to go. Well, the world is a mighty big ocean, gonna let that other fish know. Who'd ever thought I'd be talking this way? I'm just a tiny little old fish. Who'd ever thunk I'd have something to say, or could do what I want when I wish? This is what happens when you spend your whole life in a bowl on the living room shelf. Sooner or later you will look through the glass and begin to take care of yourself. Well, I'm the last of the deep sea creatures. I wish I was a whale, or a big great white, or giant squid, and you better look out and beware. Watch the Travel Channel, you leave the TV on. Next time you change the water in here, to Martinique I'm bound. Oh, no, no, well, it's time for me to go. Well, the world is a mighty big ocean, gonna let that other fish know. Oh, no, no, it's time for me to go. Well, the world is a mighty big ocean, gonna let that other fish know. I don't know.
That's Moby. What was it? Moby,
Ralph and Marianne.
Moby, Ralph, and Marianne. Yeah, I think my kids had fish with names very similar to that.
Well, Marianne was a reference to Gilligan's Island, but no one gets that.
That's immediately what came to mind.
Okay, all right.
Maybe you have to be of a certain demographic or something.
That's right.
Well, that was a sweet one. This one is not so sweet, but there is some death in it. But it's a true story from the state of Maine, and I was so grateful to be placed with you, Larry, because it gives me kind of an excuse to do my songs. Because normally I am entranced by the traditional music and the old songs that our forebears came up with, and I'm a little shy about putting my stuff out there. But you give me permission here, so
sure do. Please.
So yeah, it's a rare opportunity to do just some of my own songs, and so this one I based on a story. A true story I read about in a book by John Gould, who is a great Maine author and folklore collector. It's set during Prohibition, and as you know, Prohibition, it was hard to get a drink, a working man to get a drink, and so that figures prominently in this song. But I placed our main character, whose name is Chandlerville, in a little fishing village called Foggy Harbor, which is right down the road from where I grew up in Brunswick, Maine.
Yep.
And I felt a need, because of all the wonderful sea songs there are, but there are very few about boat builders. And so our character, Chandlerville, he's a boat builder, and I'm going to tell you about his run-in with this substance, just to prove that I wasn't making anything up. You'll hear that come up in the chorus. So didn't want you to think I was taking a flight of fancy there. Way back in 1922, down on the coast of Maine, the fishing wasn't easy and the living it was plain, but the people, they were rugged and they knew what life's about. Speaking plain, working hard and helping neighbors out. In the town of Foggy Harbor lived a man named Chandlerville. His life's work was building boats by hand from thwart to keel. Yawl boats, prams, and peapods, sloops and punts and skiffs. Chandler was the best around, no buts, no ands, no ifs. With a saw and a plane and a well-practiced eye, he built you a boat that was trim, tight, and dry. There was no better builder by Point Cove or Beach if you kept him away from the Newfoundland screech. One afternoon as Chandler was driving in some screws, in come Tom and Charlie with some unhappy news. They said that Billy Coffin had fallen off his shed. He broke his neck and now was lying stretched out cold and dead. The funeral is tomorrow, Charlie said, and we've come round to ask you for a box so we can lay him in the ground. We don't need nothing fancy, just a simple box of pine, for there's no one else can do it, so we'll pick it up at 9. with a saw and a plane and a well-practiced eye. He'd build you a boat that was trim, tight, and dry. There was no better builder by Point Cove or beach if you kept him away from that Newfoundland screech. Well, now Billy was a friend of mine, says Chandler, and I vow I'll gladly make his casket, but I just can't do it now. I've a dory here to finish up and a tender with a leak. I'll make Billy Coffin's coffin, but not until next week. Tom reached into his pocket and he pulled $10 out. Chandler said, I ain't got time. Money's not what it's about. And then Charlie set a bottle down on the dory's keel. Chandler thought a moment, then said, boys, you gotta deal with a saw and a plane and a well-practiced eye. He'd build you a boat that was trim, tight, and dry. There was no better builder by Point Cove or beach if you kept him away from the Newfoundland screech. Well, Chandler cleared a workspace. He laid out some wood, and then he thought that he should see if the rum was any good. So he tipped up the bottle, found the liquor very nice, and all that night while working he sipped it once or twice. In the morning Tom and Charlie found Chandler fast asleep beside the empty bottle in shavings ankle deep. But when they saw that casket, well, they were simply floored, for rising straight out of the lid was a 2-foot centerboard with a saw and a plane and a well-practiced eye. He built you a boat that was trim, tight, and dry. There was no better builder by Point Cove or beach if you kept him away from that Newfoundland screech. True story there.
What you do so well is you tell a story, and that's to me the quintessential element of a song, that you could make it a tale, make it a narrative, and you do that so well. That was great.
Thank you.
I always bring the mood down with my songs here, but this one is very near and dear to my heart because it is also a true story. There's been a lot of folklore as to who the character is. I've never divulged that, but I spent not many, but a number of years working on the schooners out of mid-coastal Maine. Did most of my work on the schooner Bowden during those years when she was being restored, just enough to take passengers before folks like John Nugent and others really put their hands to her and made her whole and seaworthy, more seaworthy. Can't make her any less. But the year never ended in the early fall. People went back to college. I was past that at that point, and so I stayed on board the schooner, and that was an important thing for me to do because there was a chance to enjoy solitude for a while after a very busy season of passengers and so forth. And but when it was my turn to leave, I packed up, closed the main hatch, locked the mainway, and then looked across, and there was in one of the schooners a light still on in the main cabin, and that turned out to be the home of a fellow crew member who lived his whole life on board those vessels. And I talk as though this was 1820. It was in the 1980s, and that's the thing about boats and traditional vessels, that they really do have a long-lasting, endearing quality about them. There are many, many schooners and traditional vessels still sailing, so the age of sail isn't over, in my opinion. But I put together a song that I thought would capture what life could be like to spend a whole winter on the vessel that you'd call home. It's called John. Foggy Harbor, cold and wet and not a soul. The boats are sitting crooked in the mud. All about the sounds of life are chilled and distant, and the kerosene lamps flicker in the night. Rub your hands together, pull your collars up. We'll drink another round before the night is gone. Take your chances, boys, soon we'll all be leaving, and not a word about the times to come. John comes home to his old boat, so though he wears a stocking cap down upon his ears. 10 years going, and he's worked his hands to stone and leather. Says tonight he's got to get away. Busted, broke, no place to go, that's what he says you get for putting all your time into the sea. Then a man gets old, he says, too late to settle down, he says, too late to find a place for company. Hear the hulls a-creaking hard against the rocky bottom. Hear the hungry, lonesome singing gull. Curse the winter winds, those empty dreams that took you in. When you're young enough, you never get your fill. Keep your lanterns on and throw the big hatch open wide. No man is a stranger in the cold. Throw another log into the fire. The night is young enough. Good friends keep a man from getting old. Rub your hands together, pull your collars up. We'll drink another round before the night is gone. Take your chances, boys. Soon we'll all be leaving. Not a word about the times to come. Take your chances, boys. Soon we'll all be leaving, and not a word about the times to come.
Oh, man. That took me right to the spot. That was
Thanks.
perfectly evocative. So he had a wood stove on the boat.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
We all did. He knew how to use it, though. You had to stoke him up pretty high to get it warm on those vessels, and that's where he lived.
Oh, man. Yeah, damp all the time and and cold most of the time. But talk about freedom. Mobile home ain't got nothing on a schooner as a house you can move around.
I'll never forget the first time. It was the first time I ever worked on a big traditional vessel, and I remember to this day what I thought. Just getting out past the edge of the harbor, putting on sails, and then turning the yawl boat off. I said, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And things change, and it wasn't the rest of my life, but it's still there, and talk to anyone who's done that. It's still there.
Well, you help bring it alive, that's for sure. Well, we're gonna go further back in time with this one. I read a book some years back called "The Making of a Sailor," written by Frederick Pease Harlow, who has one of the best shanty collections out there, actually, called "Shantying on Board American Ships," and he collected a lot of his shanties during his first transoceanic voyage in 1874 or 75. He was a young man from Boston who, like you, Larry, said, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life." And he served in coastal schooners for a while, but then he signed on to a ship bound for Australia around the Cape of Good Hope. And he wrote his book, Making of a Sailor, based on that voyage. And in the book is an episode when they reached the equator about the ceremony that occurred on board the ship. And I've searched and studied traditional music for a long, long time and have yet to find a traditional song about that ceremony of crossing the line, of becoming a shellback. So I decided to turn Fred Harlow's episode into a song. And if it lasts long enough, then maybe it'll be a traditional song about crossing the line. But everything in this really happened, according to Fred. And one of the fascinating things for me was that when my dad was in the Navy in the early 50s, when I grew up, and he'd tell me stories about it and show pictures, the ceremony was virtually unchanged in the 1950s from when it had been in the 1870s. So an enduring bit of sea history and sea lore. Oh, the life of a sailor is all toil and pain when the gales of the north blast him with freezing rain. But there comes a brave respite when southward he's bound, down around the equator where the sea king is found. Crossing the line, my boys, crossing the line. Pity the Joskin who's crossing the line. Though all your shipmates may like it just fine, they won't save you from Neptune when you're crossing the line. Now down in the doldrums where the flying fish play, and the hot sun is merciless day after day. Each shellback is planning while his watches he stands, for when old King Neptune will shave the green hands. Crossing the line, boys, crossing the line. Pity the Joskin who's crossing the line. Though all your shipmates may like you just fine, they won't save you from Neptune when you're crossing the line. One day a deep voice hails from over the bow, "Back your main topsail and heave her to now." And up comes old Neptune with a crown on his head, whiskers of rope yarns and a spear painted red. Crossing the line, my boys, crossing the line. Pity the Joskin who's crossing the line. Though all your shipmates may like you just fine, they won't save you from Neptune when you're crossing the line. Well, the king's royal attendants are standing close by, and their pot and pan racket, it reaches the sky. The Joskins are brought to the king of the sea. Their amazement and wonder are something to see. Crossing the line, my boys, crossing the line. Pity the Joskin who's crossing the line. Though all your shipmates may like you just fine, they won't save you from Neptune when you're crossing the line. And then will shave you in a way that's bizarre, with a barrel hoop razor and a lather of tar. He'll scrape at your cheeks till you're looking just fine. Then you're tipped on your ass in a tub full of brine. Crossing the line, my boys, crossing the line. Pity the Juskin who's crossing the line. No, all your shipmates may like you just fine. They'll save you from Neptune when you're crossing the line. Even the afterguard watches the fun as the new sons of Neptune are shaved one by one. But when it's all over and the Sea King is gone, the mate gently reminds you there's work to be done. Crossing the line, my boys, crossing the line. Pity the Juskin who's crossing the line. Though all your shipmates may like it just fine, they won't save you from Neptune when you're crossing the line.
Yay!
Awesome.
That was wonderful.
We're at just about the halfway point, so I just want to interrupt and remind the audience that both Larry and Jerry have albums that you can buy. Kate's going to put some links in the chat for us. And that the Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival runs entirely on donations. And I'm sure everyone here has already put a couple coppers in the pot. But if you haven't, toss a few coins our way, and so that we can keep paying artists like these to perform for us. Thank you all very much. And I'll shut up and let the music resume.
I also just wanted to let them know, since I know it's hard to see the chat sometimes from the performer space, that Bonnie wanted you guys to know it's so delightful to see Larry and Jerry. It's a great combination. And Larry, that we miss you all over here in the States.
I miss everybody. Hi, Bonnie, Dan. How are you?
This is wonderful, you guys. Thank you so much.
After that, I hope this is an appropriate song as well. I had occasion to go to Stockholm with my son and his wife and my wife, and we had to visit the Vasa. I don't know how many of you know about the Vasa. This is the vessel currently called the Pride of the Swedish Navy. They built a house over this boat, and there's a bit of a story. I won't spend too long on it, but she was intended to be the biggest warship on the Baltic. The king of King Gustav II Adolf in 1623 commissioned war vessels that were just gigantic. And they were also very top heavy and a huge freeboard, but that didn't bother him because they were successful for the most part. But the Vasa was going to be very different. She was also built without any lofting or any plans, which was the practice in the day. You'd get a shipwright, a naval architect, so to speak, and they would just sort of slap it together as they went. They'd say that's a good angle there, and they usually got it right until the Vasa. This vessel actually went down on her maiden voyage, actually so soon after leaving the dock that it was, almost a brief episode. It stayed underwater for about 333 years until the proud Swedes decided they've got to bring her back and restore as much as he could. Miraculously, the vessel was completely intact for the most part, except for her running rigging. So very carefully they brought her up. The wood was all spongy, but all the carvings were perfect, and did a very elaborate process of, desiccating the vessel, restoring her, and now she's a true landmark, a place that people visit. I must tell you though, when I saw her, I was amazed at how huge this vessel is. If you're ever in Sweden, you must visit. But I also started to laugh because I kind of chuckled a bit, I guess. And I said to myself, somebody screwed up here. It was about 10 knots of breeze, and she heeled a little over. All her gun ports filled with water, and over she went. There were about 30 lives lost, so that's not funny, but I've already got myself into some hot water introducing this because if there's anybody from Sweden out there, I apologize in advance for this song. But it's called The Mighty Vasa, and hopefully it tells the tale of what happened and what has been speculated for decades now as to what was the flaw in the vessel. Called The Mighty Vasa. Kind of Norse melody. Well, here's a tale from Sweden. Now the facts I shall explain. About a giant sailing ship, the Vasa was her name. August 1628, Televiken Bay. Well, the mighty Vasa did set sail, her maiden trip that day. Pride of the Swedish Navy, well, there was no bigger ship. Superior in firepower, 2 levels, 4 gun decks, 1,300 tons of oak, bowsprit to her stern. Well, 69 full meters long, 12 meters cross her beam. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship, the Vasa, fitted out and set to go. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship, the Vasa, fitted out and set to go. Well, the King of Sweden knew a guy real good at building boats. Well, the custom of the times was build them big and hope they float. Well, he didn't want no model hulls, he never drew a plan. And if she heeled, the weight below would keep her dry as sand. Well, to check if ships were stable in the 17th century, well, you made the crew run back and forth upon the deck to see. Well, no one had the guts to tell the admiral plain and clear, well, an empty bottle's better than the Vasa at the pier. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship, the Vasa, fitted out and set to go. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship, the Vasa, fitted out and set to go. Well, 150 hardy souls set sail upon that day. Gun port hatches open wide, with a crowd cheered from the quay. Up comes a little gust of wind, she heels a few degrees. Then half the bay comes pouring in and sinks her straight away. No way, the admiral cried, no way, this cannot be. This was the greatest naval ship that ever sailed the seas. Who's the fool who should have known this vessel had a flaw? Holy crap, that gullies me, I'm history for sure. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship, the Vasa, fitted out and set to go. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship, the Vasa, fitted out and set to go. 300 lonely years have passed, 100,000 days. Brave engineers and big machines did raise her from her grave. Pumped her out and waxed her down, replaced her hempen line. Well, she ain't going nowhere, well, at least it won't this time. So now she sits upon the waves, big roof upon her head. People come from far and wide to see her in that shed. And so it is, the fact remains, the Vasa's still intact. So shut the door behind you, folks. The Danes would want her back. 400 years ago, 400 years ago, oh, the mighty ship the Vasa fitted out and set to go. 400 years ago, most of it below. Oh, the mighty ship the Vasa fitted out and set to go.
Oh yeah.
There's another verse in there which I won't sing, which is a forgiveness request to the Swedes who may have been insulted by that.
Well, you're just truth telling. That's all.
That's what it is. But I would suggest anybody who wants to see something just amazing, that artistically and with all the scroll work, it's just remarkable how much was preserved, completely intact. The water was the right temperature, and I guess the bacteria was right.
Yeah. Cold Baltic waters.
That's it. Yeah.
That's the key. All right. Well, since you brought up a shipwreck, I guess I can follow on with that. Not one 400 years ago, though. This shipwreck happened off the coast of Maine in the early 90s, I believe. I read about it in the Portland Press Herald, Maine's biggest newspaper. It was in the very early days of cell phones, mobile phone technology. And it was a story about a lobsterman who got himself in trouble, but his cell phone got him out of trouble. And I got thinking about it, and in a way like the Swedes and the Vasa, there was a little bit, I think, a little bit of pride, a little bit of over-reliance on one's own abilities and the gadgets and the fancy work and all that. And so I constructed this song as sort of a cautionary tale about, technology. And not paying attention to the old ways. I didn't want to use the guy's real name because, I'd probably run into him or his cousins when I was visiting home. So I call him Jimmy Johnson, and I put him in Foggy Harbor, same little fishing village where Chandlerville built his boats. But here's the true story about Jimmy's mobile phone. Jimmy Johnson was a fisherman from Foggy Harbor, Maine. He sent trash for lobster off the shores of Casco Bay, just like his dad before him and his fathers too. He did what Johnson men had done since America was new. To the men of Foggy Harbor, the old ways were the best, but not to Jimmy Johnson. He just wasn't like the rest. He loved newfangled gadgets. There wasn't one he didn't own. So no one was the least surprised when he bought a mobile phone. Jimmy's got the latest, everybody said. He's got a rig to steer his boat and one to flush his head. He's got Loran and sonar to help him find his way. But if he don't learn to watch the waves, he'll soon have hell to pay, my boys. He'll soon have hell to pay. See, he was awful eager to get out on the phone. He would haul in weather that kept the boat at home. All the town's old timers would shake their heads and say, if he don't wise up, we'll find him at the bottom of the bay. Like the Vasa, the one cold April morning, Jimmy headed for the docks. He ignored the breakers that were pounding on the rocks. He started up his engine and he stowed his mobile phone, then headed out beyond the reach, just one small boat alone. Jimmy's got the latest, everybody said. He's got a rig to steer his boat and one to flush his head. He's got Loran and sonar to help him find his way. But if he don't learn to watch the waves, he'll soon have hell to pay, my boys, he'll soon have hell to pay. Well, out on the open water, she began to ship it green, rolling her washboards under, 'twas the worst he'd ever seen. Jimmy finally had decided that he had best return when a 17-foot comber came in right over the stern. Back in Cundy's Harbor, the phone began to ring, and Jimmy's wife got a wicked shock when she picked up the thing. Our voice said, "Hi, it's Jimmy. Would you do me a favor, please? Call the Coast Guard station and send them after me. I'm sitting in the life raft, just praying it stays afloat. I'll need some help to get back home. I'm afraid I've lost the boat." A big sea came aboard her, and she went down like a stone. And the only thing that I could save was my new mobile phone. Jimmy had the latest, everybody said. He had a rig to steer his boat and one to flush his head. Now his Loran and sonar are at the bottom of the bay. It's all gone and he's just got a phone bill left to pay. My boys, a phone bill left to pay. It's all gone and he's just got a phone bill left to pay.
Yay! Thank you for those. Thank you both. You have something in the chat that says, neither of you have lost your touch for a fine song.
Aw.
Thank you both. You have 10 minutes, by the way.
Okay.
Hey.
If I'm smart, I'll finish. I'll use 5 of them or a little less. And this is a song that I wrote for the Fisher Poets Gathering, which I've been going to for a number of years now. These are remarkable poets, all fishermen, all salmon fishermen mostly, and they fish in the winter as well for crab. The one thing that stops every show dead is if somebody's been lost at sea the previous fishing year. It's a palpable sadness that you can't describe. And it's serious. Nobody says anything. Nobody interrupts. It's a solemn moment to remember people lost in the Alaskan waters. This is called Poseidon's Three Wishes. Cold off October morning. I figured I was a little lower here. All right. Make sure I get this right. Yeah. Oh, that's what's wrong. Okay. I better shift back to one capo. Cold October morning, one last bit of rain. The sun's just starting up to rise, one cloud still in the way. I wish I had someone to tell how hard it is to cry. Harbor's on a going tide, a river's going dry. Funny how I never sit here, never had the space. Call it home, then all you do is leave this pretty place. You go and chase the fish offshore, and you worry about your crew. And if you get back in the night, there's no one waits for you. I'd like to have 3 wishes from Poseidon's selfish sea, his gift for all my putting up with all he did to me. For every goddamn hungry month I couldn't pay for gear, and putting off those little things that grow bigger every year. Well, the first wish I would bring back every friend I lost at sea. The second, I would have a wife I knew would wait for me. The third, a home high in the hills with no path down to the sea. And if I could just have one more wish, I'd make him bow to me. So if on this rusty weathered bench there's someone sitting here, and if they cared for my advice, I'd tell them straight and clear. I'd say, make sure the dreams you dream are higher than this sky. Spend your life remembering you can only reach so high. So set out on the ocean with a hunger for big hauls. Settle for the smaller catch, if that makes sense at all. Poseidon, he is never fair, and he'd never grant one wish, or care what angry oceans do to men and boats and fish.
Wow. Thank you, Larry. Jerry, you get to follow that with one last song in the, we've got about 3 minutes left.
Perfect. Well, that sets me up ideally for a parting song. I wrote this on the occasion of the memorial service for Stan Hugel. That was held at the Mystic Seaport, I think in 92 or 93. And yeah, it's got a variety of partings in it, because living is about leaving in many different ways. It's called Hard to Say Goodbye. Oh, the hour was late and the moon was high, yet still we did not depart, for the glow of pleasant company warmed each and every heart. Just one more song, said someone, as the barkeep doused the light. So we sang a final chorus, ringing out into the night. It is no consolation, knowing time must fly. It's still very hard when the hour comes and it's time to say goodbye. Why must you go, the young wife says, and tears are in her eyes. To build a better life for us, he tendered practice for many a long day. Yet still she cries when he at last is finally on his way. It is no consolation, knowing time must fly. It's still very hard when the hour comes and it's time to say goodbye. Two brothers stood upon the dock, not knowing what to say. For one was going to board a ship, while the other one would stay. One had made the choice to travel out into the world alone, while the other one chose family, security, and home. It is no consolation, knowing time must fly. It's still very hard when the hour comes and it's time to say goodbye. When the news arrived from far away that our old friend was gone, we did not call it tragedy to hear he traveled on, for his life had been a long one, with friends and pleasure filled. And yet a stone was in our hearts to think his voice was stilled. It is no consolation, knowing time must fly. It's still very hard when the hour comes and it's time to say goodbye. Oh, it is no consolation, knowing time must fly. It's still very hard when the hour comes and it's time to say goodbye. Thank you all.
All right. We can all unmute and give a big hand to Larry Kaplan and Jerry Bryant.
Good job,
Thank
Larry.
you both
Thank you.
so much. Check
Very
the
good.
chat.
Oh,
Make sure
wonderful to see
performers
you.
check the chat for all the tear-jerked comments there. And audience, make sure you check the chat for links to where you can get more of Larry and Jerry's music, where you can toss a couple coins our way to help pay our performers. And stay tuned here in the USS Ranger, named for the first vessel of the US Navy built here in Portsmouth. Stay tuned for Jeff Kaufman in a solo set, or take a look at the schedule for all the other great stuff that is going on. And I think we can pause the recording at this point.